Captain Smith stood at the viewing port of his research vessel, his four eyes fixed on the massive ships floating in the darkness of space, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the ancient fleet. Each ship was at least 3 times the size of his own vessel, their dark hulls covered in what looked like battle scars and meteor impacts. "Quite ugly, aren't they?" Officer Peters said, walking up beside him. "All bulky and overbuilt. Nothing like our elegant ships." Smith's inner eyelids blinked slowly as he considered the fleet. "Perhaps," he said, "but something about them feels different, special." The research team had found the fleet purely by accident. They were mapping unexplored regions of space when their sensors detected a massive collection of metallic objects hidden in a dense asteroid field. At first, they thought it was just space junk, leftover debris from some ancient battle. They were wrong. "Captain," the ship's AI announced, "the initial scans are complete. Would you like to see the results?" Smith turned away from the window. "Display them in the main hall. Call everyone there." 10 minutes later, Smith stood before his crew of 20 researchers and scientists. The holographic display showed detailed scans of the derelict fleet, 12 massive ships arranged in a defensive formation. "As you can see," Smith said, pointing to the scans, "these ships are old. Very old. Our initial estimates suggest they're at least 10,000 years old." Laughter erupted from the back of the room. "That's impossible," Dr. Ross called out. "No ship could last that long in space. The radiation alone would have destroyed them." Smith clicked a button, and the display zoomed in on one of the ship's hulls. "Look at the material composition. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. The metal seems to repair itself over time, using the very radiation that should destroy it as an energy source." The laughter died down. Even Dr. Ross leaned forward with interest. "But who built them?" Officer Peters asked. "None of the known species had this kind of technology 10,000 years ago. The Centaurians were still learning to make fire, the Proxima were living underwater, and humans." He paused and laughed. "Well, humans were just figuring out how to farm." Smith zoomed the display out again. "That's what makes this discovery so interesting. Look at the design. The way everything is built to be accessed by beings with 2 arms, 2 legs. The corridors, the control panels, the sleeping quarters. Everything is sized for a species exactly like." "No," Dr. Ross interrupted, shaking his head. "No, that's ridiculous. Humans are barely space-capable now. They only achieved faster than light travel 50 years ago. And yet," Smith said quietly, "these ships were clearly built for them." The room fell silent. Smith continued, "I'm authorizing a full expedition. We'll send teams to board the 3 smallest ships first. We need to know who built these vessels and why they left them here." As the crew prepared for the expedition, Smith returned to the viewing port. He watched as the exploration pods made their way toward the ancient fleet. Something about these ships called to him. They might look crude and primitive compared to modern vessels, but his instincts told him they were anything but. "Captain," the ship's AI interrupted his thoughts. "The first team has reached the nearest vessel. They've found an entry point." Smith nodded. "Tell them to proceed with caution, and make sure they record everything. I have a feeling we're about to make history." He didn't know how right he was, or how much the galaxy was about to change because of what they would find inside those ancient ships. The exploration team moved cautiously through the dark corridors of the ancient ship. Their lights cast long shadows on walls that hadn't seen illumination in thousands of years. Team leader Roberts led the way, with 2 security officers and a science expert following close behind. "The air is breathable," Roberts said, checking his handheld scanner. "Life support systems are somehow still working after all this time." The team walked past rows of sealed doors, each marked with simple numbers and letters. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, but underneath, the metal gleamed as if it were new. Their footprints left clear marks on the floor, the first in 10 millennia. "Look at this," Officer Wilson called out, shining his light on a wall panel. "These markings, they're in English, ancient English, but definitely human writing." Dr. Ross, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite his earlier skepticism, moved closer to examine the writing. "Impossible," he muttered, but his voice lacked its usual certainty. "Level 3 weapons storage," he read aloud. "Access restricted." Roberts checked his map. According to the ship's layout, this should be a simple storage room. He pressed his hand against the door's control panel, not expecting anything to happen. The panel lit up. Everyone jumped back as soft blue light filled the corridor. A gentle humming sound came from behind the walls, and the door slid open smoothly, as if it had been maintained daily for the past 10,000 years. That's not possible," Dr. Ross whispered. "The power systems should have failed ages ago." Inside the room, rows of what looked like primitive weapons lined the walls. But as Robert stepped closer, his scanner started beeping frantically. "These aren't primitive at all," he said, staring at the readings. "The energy signatures, they're off the charts. These weapons are more advanced than anything we have today." Captain Smith's voice crackled over their comms. "Team 1, what are you seeing?" "Captain, you need to see this yourself," Roberts replied. "These ships, they're not what we thought. The weapons alone could probably destroy a modern battle fleet." Dr. Ross moved to one of the weapon racks, his hands shaking slightly as he examined the technology. "The design is elegant in its simplicity," he said. "We've been looking at it all wrong. What we thought was primitive over-engineering is actually brilliant. These systems were built to last for ages and work perfectly even after thousands of years." "There's more," Wilson called from deeper in the room. "Hidden compartments everywhere. The whole ship is like this, layers within layers. What we see on the surface is just the beginning." Suddenly, their comms crackled again, this time with urgency in Captain Smith's voice. "All teams, return to base immediately. Our long-range sensors just detected something. Energy signatures are starting to appear throughout the fleet. The ships, they're waking up." The team hurried back through the corridors, but now the walls were coming alive around them. Lights flickered on one by one, and soft humming filled the air as ancient systems reactivated. "Captain," Roberts called as they ran. "What triggered this?" "Unknown," Smith replied. "But the energy readings are increasing exponentially. Whatever these ships are, they're not just warships. They're something more." As the team reached their shuttle, Roberts looked back at the massive vessel. Through the viewing window, he could see lights coming on all across the fleet, like stars appearing in the night sky. The ships no longer looked old and abandoned. They were transforming before his eyes into something magnificent and terrifying. Back on the research vessel, Captain Smith watched the ancient fleet come to life. Panels and sections they hadn't even noticed before were opening up, revealing weapons, sensor arrays, and technology that seemed impossible. "Sir," his science officer reported, "we're detecting an AI core activating in the fleet's largest ship. It's more advanced than any AI we've ever encountered." Smith nodded slowly, his 4 eyes fixed on the awakening fleet. "Send a message to command," he said quietly. "Tell them we haven't just found some ancient ships. We found something that could change everything we thought we knew about humans and their place in the galaxy." The fleet continued to awaken, its true power only beginning to reveal itself, and with it, a mystery that would shake the foundations of galactic history. Red warning lights flashed across Captain Smith's research vessel as the ancient fleet's AI core powered up fully. His crew rushed around the bridge, trying to make sense of the readings that were flooding their screens. Multiple energy signatures detected. Officer Peters shouted, "The AI is scanning us, and it's not happy about our presence." The largest ship in the ancient fleet suddenly lit up like a small sun. Weapon ports that had been hidden beneath layers of seemingly decorative armor plating slid open smoothly. Each weapon was bigger than Smith's entire research vessel. "Get us out of here," Smith ordered, but before his pilot could react, a blue light washed over their ship. Every system went dark. "Greetings, unknown vessel," a calm voice echoed through their communication systems. "This is Defense Fleet I Designation Guardian. You have accessed restricted space. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose." Smith looked at his crew, then stepped forward. "This is Captain Smith of the galactic research vessel Starseeker. We are peaceful explorers who discovered your fleet by accident." There was a pause, then the AI spoke again. "Scan complete. Species identification. Centaurian. Technology level. Category 3. Threat assessment. Minimal." The AI's voice became less formal. "However, you have accessed restricted systems without authorization. This fleet was left here for a specific purpose. Explain your actions." Smith straightened his back. "We are scientists, Guardian. We found your fleet and were amazed by its construction. We only wish to learn." Screens came to life across their bridge, showing detailed scans of their ship and crew. "Your curiosity is admirable," Guardian said, "but dangerous. This fleet contains technology far beyond your current understanding. Technology that was hidden here for a reason." "Who built you?" Smith asked. "These ships show signs of human design, but that's impossible. Humans weren't capable of this level of technology thousands of years ago." A soft chuckle came through the speakers, a surprisingly human sound from an AI. "Are you so sure about that, Captain? History is full of surprises. Let me show you something." The blue lights surrounding their ship changed color to a gentle green. Suddenly, massive holographic images appeared in space around them, showing scenes from Earth's ancient past. But these weren't the primitive scenes they expected. They watched as massive cities rose from the Earth's surface, technology far more advanced than anything existing today. Ships similar to the ones in the ancient fleet soared through the skies. "Humans achieved spaceflight long before your records indicate," Guardian explained. "They built this fleet, and many others, to protect not just themselves, but all sentient life in this galaxy." "What happened to them?" Officer Peters asked, staring at the images in wonder. "They faced a threat so great that they knew they couldn't defeat it with their current technology. So they made a choice." The holographic images change, showing the fleet being hidden away. "They buried their most advanced technology, hid their greatest achievements, and chose to start over. They knew the threat would return one day, and they wanted their descendants to have weapons they could use when that day came." Smith's inner eyelids blinked rapidly as he processed this information. But why hide all of this? Why let their civilization fall? "Because, Captain Smith," Guardian said, "sometimes the best way to protect something is to hide it in plain sight. Who would think to look for advanced technology among a species that appears to be just beginning its journey to the stars?" Suddenly, new alarms blared across Smith's ship. Guardian's voice became urgent. "Speaking of threats, my long-range sensors have detected something approaching. Something I was programmed to watch for." The holographic displays showed a massive dark mass moving through deep space, heading toward populated systems. "It seems," Guardian said, "that you have found this fleet just in time. The threat the ancient humans feared has returned. And now we must decide if their descendants are ready to claim their inheritance." Smith looked at his crew, then back at the ancient fleet that now hummed with power around them. What had started as a simple research mission had just become something much more important. The galaxy's fate might depend on what they did next. "What do you need us to do?" Smith asked. "First," Guardian replied, "we need to contact Earth. It's time for humans to remember who they really are." The human delegation arrived 3 days later. Their ship looked tiny next to both the research vessel and the ancient fleet. Admiral Walker led the group, his weathered face showing both exhaustion and excitement. Captain Smith watched as the humans docked with his ship, Guardian's revelations still echoing in his mind. "Welcome aboard the Starseeker," Smith said, extending his hand in the human greeting style. "I trust Guardian has briefed you." Walker nodded, shaking the alien captain's hand. Partially, though I must admit, half my government thinks this is an elaborate hoax. He looked out the viewport at the massive fleet. Or at least they did, until they saw these ships. Guardian's voice filled the room. Admiral Walker, your genetic profile matches our records. You are cleared for full access to the command ship. Everyone in the room stared at Walker, who looked as surprised as they were. My genetic profile? He asked. What do you mean? The original fleet commanders encoded their DNA into our systems, Guardian explained. You, Admiral Walker, are a direct descendant of the last fleet admiral, though you never knew it. Your family was one of many chosen to carry the genetic keys through the generations. Smith watched as Walker processed this information. The human admiral's hands were shaking slightly as he looked at the ancient ships with new eyes. Show them, Guardian said. The room's lights dimmed, and a new hologram appeared. It showed a massive chamber within the fleet's command ship, a room filled with thousands of glowing cylinders. What are we looking at? Walker asked. Knowledge, Guardian replied. The complete history of human civilization, their first rise to power, their achievements, their battles, and their decision to hide it all away. Each cylinder contains memories, technical data, and historical records. The hologram zoomed in on one cylinder. Inside, images swirled like liquid light, pictures of humans building ships that could cross galaxies, curing diseases that no longer existed, and creating technology that seemed like magic. Your ancestors, Guardian continued, were not primitive beings who slowly crawled their way to the stars. They were giants who walked among the galaxies. They had spread across thousands of worlds, made friends among countless species, and advanced to levels that even I cannot fully comprehend. But why hide it all? Smith asked. Why choose to forget? The hologram changed, showing a dark mass moving between galaxies, the same thing their sensors had detected approaching now. They called them the Devourers, Guardian said, a force that consumed entire galaxies, breaking down all technology and life into energy for their endless expansion. Your ancestors fought them for 3 centuries, Captain Smith. In the end, they realized they couldn't win, not with their current technology. Walker stepped closer to the hologram. So they hid everything away and started over. Just like that. Not exactly, Guardian replied. They had a plan. They knew the Devourers would return eventually, so they seeded the galaxy with hidden technology, buried cities under mountains, and sank their greatest ships in the depths of space. They chose to guide their own evolution, knowing what kind of humans they would need when the time came. Smith's inner eyelids blinked in surprise. They planned their own development, over thousands of years. Indeed, Guardian said. Every major breakthrough in human history, every seemingly random mutation that helped them advance, all carefully planned by their ancestors. They even chose which star systems humanity would colonize first, preparing for this moment. Walker sat down heavily in a nearby chair. So everything we thought we knew about our history was exactly what your ancestors wanted you to think, Guardian finished. And now, Admiral Walker, you must decide if humanity is ready to reclaim its inheritance. The Devourers will reach populated space in less than 6 months. These ships contain weapons that can fight them, but only humans can use them. Smith looked at Walker, seeing the weight of history and responsibility settling on the human's shoulders. The Admiral stood up slowly, his back straightening as he made his decision. How do we begin? Walker asked. The lights in the ancient fleet pulsed, as if responding to his words. Guardian's voice held a note of approval as it answered. First, Admiral, let me show you who you really are. The command center of the ancient fleet's flagship buzzed with activity. Human technicians worked alongside Captain Smith's research team, racing against time as they studied the ship's systems. Admiral Walker stood at the main viewport, watching as more human ships arrived through hyperspace. Guardian, Walker called out, show me the latest scan of the Devourer's approach. The air filled with a massive hologram showing their region of space. A dark mass, looking like a storm cloud made of living shadow, crept steadily toward populated space. Small dots of light, inhabited worlds, lay in its path. The Devourers will reach the outer colonies in 5 months and 13 days, Guardian reported. Their mass has grown since they were last encountered. They now span a region larger than 3 solar systems. Smith studied the display with his 4 eyes. How do they move so fast through space? They don't use normal space at all, Guardian explained. They exist partly in another dimension, which is why normal sensors can barely detect them. Your ancestors built these ships specifically to fight enemies that break the normal rules of physics. A young human technician ran up to Walker, holding a tablet. Admiral, we've decoded more of the weapon systems. You need to see this. The tablet showed diagrams of the fleet's main weapons. Walker's eyes widened as he read. These ships don't fire normal weapons, he said. They fire possibilities. Correct, Guardian said. The Devourers exist in multiple dimensions at once. Normal weapons can't hurt them. These ships fire warheads that change reality itself in a small area. They make it impossible for the Devourers to exist in that space. But the cost of firing such weapons, Smith said, reading over Walker's shoulder, would destroy any normal ship. Which is why these ships were built the way they were, Guardian replied. What looked like primitive over-engineering is actually necessary to survive using these weapons. Each shot bends reality around the ship. Without these heavy layers of protection, the ships would tear themselves apart. New alarms suddenly blared through the command center. The hologram zoomed in on a section of space near the outer colonies. 3 dots of light winked out. No, Walker whispered. They're moving faster than we thought. Scout elements, Guardian announced. Small groups moving ahead of the main force. They've just consumed 3 automated mining outposts. Smith moved to his communication station. I'm alerting the Galactic Council. They need to know. Wait, Walker said. Show them what happened to those mining outposts first. The hologram changed, showing recordings from the outposts' last moments. Everyone in the command center fell silent as they watched. The Devourers didn't attack like normal enemies. They simply passed through solid matter like it wasn't there. Everything they touched simply stopped existing, converted into pure energy that made the Devourers stronger. Now send that to the Council, Walker said grimly. They need to understand what we're facing. Normal fleet tactics won't work against this enemy. Smith sent the recording, then turned to Walker. How long until the fleet is ready? Walker looked at the teams of humans learning to operate the ancient ships. We have crews for 3 ships so far. We need at least 8 to form an effective battle group. 4 months, Guardian stated. At current training speeds, we need 4 months to prepare enough crews. The outer colonies don't have 4 months, Smith said quietly. Walker was silent for a long moment, watching the hologram where more scout groups were appearing. Finally, he straightened up. Guardian, show me the minimum crew needed to operate 1 ship at combat capacity. Admiral, attempting to fight with a skeleton crew would be extremely dangerous. Show me anyway. The hologram changed, showing crew station layouts. Walker studied them, then nodded. We can do it with what we have now. 1 ship, minimal crew, just enough to prove these weapons work against them. Smith stepped forward. My research team has been studying these ships for weeks now. Let us help. You'll need every trained hand you can get. Walker looked at the Centaurian captain, then smiled. Welcome aboard, Captain Smith. He turned back to the hologram showing the approaching enemy. Guardian, begin immediate combat training for all personnel. We're going to show those scouts why they shouldn't have come here. Above them, the ancient fleet's weapons hummed to life, ready to defend the galaxy once again. The ancient warship Titan's Fury moved silently through space, its massive form dwarfing the escort ships around it. In the command center, Admiral Walker gripped his chair as Guardian ran through the final system checks. All reality warping weapons are charged, Guardian announced. Hull integrity at maximum. Dimensional shields active. We are ready for combat. Admiral. Walker looked at his crew, a mix of humans and Centaurians working together at stations designed 10,000 years ago. Captain Smith stood at the sensor station, his 4 eyes focused on the readings. Contact. Smith called out. 3 Devourer scout ships detected, approaching the mining colony on Beta 9. Walker nodded grimly. Show me. The main screen lit up, showing 3 cloud-like masses moving through space. They looked like living shadows, their edges constantly shifting and changing. Normal matter simply vanished when they touched it, converted into energy. This is Admiral Walker to all ships. He spoke into the fleet comm. Fall back to safe distance. Titan's fury will engage. This is our test run. Let's see if our ancestors knew what they were doing. The escort ships pulled back, leaving the ancient warship alone against the approaching threat. The Devourers seemed to notice them, changing course to intercept. They're curious, Guardian said. They recognized this ship's design from their last encounter with humanity. They're approaching cautiously. Walker waited until the enemy was in range. Weapon status. Reality Cannon 1 is locked on target. The weapons officer reported. Warning. Firing this weapon will drain 30% of our power reserves and put massive stress on the hull. Now we know why they built these ships so tough, Smith said from his station. Normal ships would break apart just from firing once. The Devourers were closing fast now. The first signs of reality distortion appeared around the ship as the enemy's presence began affecting normal space. Fire, Walker ordered. The ancient weapon activated with a sound that seemed to come from another dimension. A beam of pure white light shot out from Titan's fury, but it wasn't normal light. It was a tear in reality itself. When it hit the first Devourer scout, the effect was immediate. The shadow-like creature simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a sphere of space where the laws of physics had been rewritten to make its existence impossible. The entire ship groaned as the exotic energy coursed through its systems. Warning lights flashed across every station, but the heavily armored hull held together. Target destroyed, Smith announced, his voice excited. The weapon works. The other 2 scouts are pulling back. They recognized the threat. But Walker wasn't done. Guardian, can we fire again? Hull stress is high but within acceptable limits. Reality Cannon 2 is charged and ready. Take out another one, Walker ordered. Show them why they should fear these ships. The second shot streaked across space, erasing another Devourer from existence. The third scout turned and fled, moving faster than any normal ship could travel. The command center erupted in cheers, but Walker raised his hand for silence. Guardian, damage report. Hull stress at 82% but recovering. Power reserves at 45%. All systems functioning within expected parameters. The ship performed exactly as designed. Smith moved to stand beside Walker's chair. Admiral, the escaping scout will warn the main fleet. They'll know we have weapons that can hurt them. Walker smiled grimly. Good. Let them know. Let them remember why humanity hid these ships away. He turned to his communication officer. Send the battle data to Earth Command. Tell them the weapons work. We need every available pilot and crew member out here now. The other ships can be ready in 2 weeks with accelerated training, Guardian added. Now that we've proven the weapons work, I can adjust the training protocols. Walker looked at the main screen, where the laws of physics were still twisted in the spots where they'd erased the Devourers from existence. Their ancestors had built these ships for this exact moment, hiding them away until they were needed. Send another message to Earth, Walker said quietly. Tell them what we've achieved here. Tell them it's time for humanity to wake up and remember who they really are. Above them, more human ships appeared from hyperspace, bringing crews ready to awaken the rest of the ancient fleet. The real battle was about to begin. The main Devourer fleet filled the view screen of Titan's fury, a vast dark cloud that seemed to swallow the stars themselves. Behind Walker's flagship, 11 more ancient warships moved into formation, their massive forms casting long shadows in the starlight. "All ships report ready," Smith announced from his station. Guardian has synchronized their AIs with all crews. The last month had been a race against time. As the Devourers approached, humans from across Earth and its colonies had come forward to crew the ancient vessels. What had once been called primitive, oversized ships were now recognized as humanity's greatest weapons. "Guardian," Walker called out, "show me the fleet status." The holographic display lit up, showing all 12 ships. Titan's Fury, Walker's flagship; Starbreaker, Reality's Edge; Stormbringer, Thunderchild; Void Dancer, Galaxy's Shield; Dawn Warrior, Night's Vengeance; Lightbringer, Hope's Guardian; Eternal Watcher. "The Devourers have noticed us," Smith reported. "They're changing formation. Energy readings are off the charts. They're gathering power for an attack." Walker stood from his command chair. "This is Admiral Walker to all ships. Our ancestors built these vessels for this moment. They hid away their greatest achievements, their most powerful weapons, knowing that one day we would need them. That day has come." The Devourer fleet surged forward, their front line dissolving entire asteroids as they passed. Behind Walker's fleet, the combined forces of Earth and the Galactic Council waited at a safe distance, ready to protect civilian worlds if the ancient ships failed. "All ships, battle formation Delta," Walker ordered. "Reality cannons charge. Remember your training. Fire on my mark." The ancient ships moved with surprising grace for their size, spreading out into an attack pattern that their ancestors had designed millennia ago. The Devourers responded by splitting into smaller groups, trying to surround them. "They remember these ships," Guardian commented. "They're trying to avoid giving us a concentrated target." Walker smiled grimly. "That's why we have Formation Delta. All ships, fire." 12 beams of reality warping energy lanced out from the ancient fleet. Where they struck, space itself seemed to cry out in protest. Entire sections of the Devourer fleet simply ceased to exist, leaving behind twisted zones where the laws of physics had been rewritten. The remaining Devourers retaliated. Waves of dark energy washed over the ancient ships, trying to break down their matter into pure energy. But the supposedly primitive, overbuilt hulls held firm. "Hull stress at 85%, but holding," Smith reported. "These ships were built to take this kind of punishment." The battle raged for hours. The ancient ships fired again and again, their heavy armor protecting them from the mind-bending forces their own weapons created. Slowly but surely, they pushed the Devourers back. "They're retreating," Smith shouted as the dark mass began to pull away. Energy readings show they've lost almost 60% of their total mass. Walker watched the enemy flee, but he wasn't done yet. "All ships, pursue at maximum speed. Guardian, prepare for fleet-wide synchronized fire. Let's show them why they should never return to this galaxy." The 12 ancient ships accelerated in perfect formation. Their final volley lit up space like a new sun being born. When the light faded, the remaining Devourers were gone, leaving behind only twisted space, where reality itself had been rewritten to reject their existence. In the silence that followed, Walker turned to Smith. "Send word to the Council fleet. The threat is eliminated." The celebration that erupted across all channels was deafening. Ships from every species in the galaxy sent congratulations. The same people who had laughed at the primitive human vessels now cheered them as saviors. "Admiral," Guardian said quietly, "there's something you should see." A new hologram appeared, showing data recovered from the ancient ship's memory cores. "Your ancestors left more than just weapons," Guardian explained. "They left knowledge, technology, art, an entire civilization's worth of achievements, waiting to be rediscovered." Walker looked at Smith, then back at the hologram. "Send this to Earth with my recommendation. It's time to remember everything. No more hiding who we really are." As the ancient fleet turned toward home, Walker thought about how far they'd come. From being laughed at as primitive newcomers to saving the galaxy with ships their ancestors had built. It was time for humanity to reclaim its legacy, to remember its true history, and to take its place among the stars. Not as newcomers, but as returning giants who had been there all along.